Reggie, I just sold my car online.
Let's go, Grandpa. Wait, you did?
Yep, on Carvana. Just put in the license plate, answered a few questions, got an offer in minutes. Easier than setting up that new digital picture frame.
You don't say.
Yeah, they're even picking it up tomorrow. Talk about fast.
Wow, way to go. So, about that picture frame.
Forget about it. Until Carvana makes one, I'm not interested.
Car selling made easy. On
Carvana.
pickup fees may apply.
They say I talk too much, say I ask the wrong things, but if the truth feels weird, then I'm pulling that string. So quote me, it's probably nothing, just asking questions, yeah, that's my thing. Laughing through chaos, digging through lies, if it makes you uncomfortable, I'm doing it right. So quote me, it's probably nothing, say it too loud, now it's stuck in your head. If this all goes wrong, just remember I said it's probably nothing.
Hey, hi, hello, welcome back to Don't Quote Me, It's Probably Nothing, the podcast where I get high and talk about weird stuff. If you're new here, welcome. I'm so happy to have you. And just so you know, when I said welcome, I used the sign for welcome because I've been learning sign language. And can I tell you how fun it is to learn sign language? However, there's nobody that I can talk to with this sign language once I am fluent. And I'm just going to go around finding all of the hearing impaired and just have conversations with them. But anyway, I'm Kelly. That's my name. Don't wear it out. You remember saying that when you were kids? Someone would like say something, you'd be like, that's my name. Don't wear it out. Or was I the only loser that said that? But anyway, today, sorry for my sniffles and stuffy voice still. I'm still sick. But anyway, we are going to be talking about the Book of Enoch, the ancient text that expands on Genesis, introduces the Watchers, explains where giants supposedly came from, and casually suggests that before the flood, humanity was not entirely human. This episode isn't just chaos, it's ancient chaos. So grab your snacks if you got them, and put on your fanciest tinfoil hat, please. And let's talk about weird stuff. Okay, so before I get into everything, we probably should talk about what the Book of Enoch actually is so that we can understand it. So the Book of Enoch isn't just some weird thing that just popped up. It's an actual text and it's old. Older than most of the New Testament old. So scholars generally date parts of the Book of Enoch somewhere between 300 BCE and 100 BCE. So we're talking Second Temple Judaism era. Same broad window as when a lot of foundational Jewish texts were circulating and evolving. And the thing that most people don't realize is that the Book of Enoch was widely read in ancient Jewish communities. Fragments of it were found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, which means it was important enough to be copied and preserved alongside other sacred texts. But for some reason, it didn't make it into the final cut of most modern biblical canons, which if you ever want to hear about that, I did an episode about it. Well, it was the Vatican episode, and I just talk about how they ended up coming up with the books that are in the Bible. And it's because you should go listen to the episode, but it's because a bunch of men had a meeting and hey, this goes in and this doesn't, basically. But anyway, so even though that it didn't make it into that noise probably sounded so gross in your ear, but I have lip oil and I just pulled the tube out. It made a weird noise. But anyway, sorry. My lips are really dry from being sick, and the chapstick is I like it, but the lip oil, I feel it hydrates my lips more. And yeah, I'd rather use that. Plus, it kind of tastes good. Smells a little like coconut. And I like the container that it's in, the lip, the holder, I guess, whatever you call it. I like that, so that's why I use it. Does anybody else buy stuff because they like the way it looks? Anyway, the Book of Enoch actually is still considered scripture in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. So it never fully disappeared, it just fell out of the Western canon. Now, who is Enoch? Well, if you've ever read Genesis, if you blinked, you missed him. Sorry, I thought it was funny. So Genesis chapter 5, verse 24 says, Enoch walked with God, and then he was no more because God took him. And that's it. There's no death story, no burial. He was just gone, which immediately makes him mysterious. So in Jewish tradition, Enoch becomes this elevated, almost like cosmic figure, someone who didn't just die, but was taken into the heavens and shown secrets. So the Book of Enoch is written as if it's Enoch narrating visions he received. Visions about angels, the structure of the cosmos, the fate of the wicked, and most dramatically, what actually happened in Genesis 6. And Genesis 6 is where everything starts to get weird. So Genesis says, it says, the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days. But then it just like moves on. There's no explanation, no details, just drops Nephilim like we all know what that means. Also, this kind of made me chuckle. I don't even know if any of you read the Bible out there, but I do. But it's okay if you don't. But you ever read like the Old Testament and like you get to the names and it's like, he was walking and he met his... And then they met up with him. That's literally how I read it because I don't know how to pronounce those names. But anyway, I just felt like sharing that with you. But yeah, so it just mentions Nephilim like we know what it means. And then the Book of Enoch is like, oh, you want some details? I'll give you some details. And then this is where the Watchers comes in. So, in Enoch, the sons of God are described as a group of angels called the Watchers, and they're assigned to watch over humanity. But instead, they become fascinated with humans, specifically human women. And according to the text, around 200 of these angels descended to earth, and they don't just like wander down casually. They swear an oath together because apparently even the angels need like group accountability when they're about to do something wild. Okay, so they make a pact on Mount Hermon, and the leader is named Semjaza. Sometimes it's called Shemihaza. What is that? I can picture his face. I want to say it was Jim Carrey, but I don't. And he was like, Shimaleha, right? Was that him? Was that Jim Carrey? I don't know. I don't know who that was. But the only reason I said it is because my husband says it all the time for no reason. He'll just be like walking in the bathroom and just shout that out loud. I think he's a little slow. Oh, man. Anyway, the other guy's name was Azazel. But here is where it gets wild. Okay, so the Watchers take human wives and then they teach these humans things. And it's not like they're teaching like gardening tips, which I would love, by the way, because I have what I call black thumbs because I cannot keep anything alive. I was growing so many plants in my bathtub last year, like vegetables and stuff. I had this vision for this garden and it was going to be glorious. My one this year, it really is going to be glorious though. I just got to get all this stuff again and like actually do it. But I had everything growing in my bathtub because like we didn't use it really. We always used the stand-up shower. I had green beans and broccoli and like cabbage and lettuce and other beans. And I had carrots. And what else did I have? Watermelon. And I had honeydew and cantaloupe and so many vegetables. Like I literally could have fed my entire neighborhood with the amount of I didn't read the directions on the packets either, so I didn't know that you were like only supposed to plant a couple, or that like one bean or one seed of whatever would grow so much. And I literally planted the entire bag. It was a lot. We had so many vegetables in my bathroom. But anyway, they died. And I feel bad about it because I feel like I killed something, you know, because especially my beans, they were growing so good and they looked so happy. And I would talk to them when I was spraying them and I would tell them how cute they are. And I'm like, I bet you're going to be delicious one day, you know, while I was spraying them with water. And they were just so happy. And then, but you know what? Then I wasn't happy. And then I think that's why they died. And I solved it. I can have green thumbs now. I will be happy with my plants and they will be delicious. And they will survive. Anyway, They taught metalworking, weapon crafting, cosmetics, enchantments, astrology, root cutting, which is herbal knowledge, and celestial secrets. So, in other words, forbidden knowledge. And Enoch frames this as corruption. So humans weren't meant to have this information yet. So what happens when divine beings mix with humans and hand over advanced knowledge? Chaos. Chaos happens. So according to Enoch, the union between the Watchers and human women produces offspring. These offspring are the Nephilim, and they're described as giants. They're violent, ravenous, and overwhelming beings. So some translations say that they were 300 cubits tall, and 300 cubits would actually be absurd, like hundreds of feet tall. So many scholars believe that's symbolic exaggeration or a scribal issue, but the point isn't exact height. The point is that they were massive. And they consumed everything. So they devoured buildings, just everything within their sight. And then when they ate the buildings, they would go on to livestock, and then they just started eating people. But then they ran out of food. And then when they ran out of food, they turned on humanity. They were morally corrupt and destructive. And the earth becomes filled with violence, which interestingly lines up with the Genesis, with the thing in Genesis that says the earth was corrupt in God's sight and full of violence. And Enoch basically says, yeah, that's because angel-human hybrids were running around wrecking everything. But it also doesn't stop there. So when the giants die, their spirits remain on earth. And Enoch describes these as evil spirits, like what later traditions would call demons. So to put it all together, everything that I just said. Basically, the Book of Enoch is fallen angels have meet human women, and they create giants. And the giants die, and they become disembodied spirits. And then the spirits become corrupting forces. It's like a full supernatural origin story. This is how Lex Luthor became his guy that he does. But anyway, so now it shifts from violent chaos to judgment. And that's when God floods the earth. According to Enoch, the flood is a response to all the violence, a cleansing. So the archangels, Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, and Uriel report what's happening. And God commands the giants will destroy each other. The Watchers will be bound. Azazel will be imprisoned in the desert. Semjaza and the others will be chained beneath the earth. And then the flood wipes out the corrupted bloodline, and the Watchers are locked away until final judgment. And that creates a different theological story compared to the one that you're taught in school if you went to Catholic school or something like that, It reframes the flood, I feel like. Instead of humans were bad, it's humanity was tampered with, and knowledge was weaponized, and the natural order was disrupted. Okay, so now that I told you about the Book of Enoch, let's do all of the deep dives into all of the things. Also, there is thousands, probably, I was about to say probably hundreds, but hundreds is less. So I'm going to stick with thousands. There's so many crows flying around my house right now, just mine, in a circle. It's insane. It's wild. My goodness. There's so many. Remember the last time I did this happened to me? But it wasn't that many when I was I think it was during Halloween. It was in October, and I was doing a creepy story, and I was freaking myself out, and then all these crows came out of nowhere. What if that's this again? But anyway, on to the deep dives. Okay, so let's lock in on the giants first. So Genesis 6 introduces them in the one sentence with no explanation or context. They just drop it and keep moving. And the Book of Enoch is oh yeah, no, they were the offspring of fallen angels and human women, and they were enormous, and they devoured everything, and they corrupted the earth. So what does Nephilim even mean? The Hebrew root nephil means to fall. So Nephilim can be translated as fallen ones, those who cause others to fall, or the fallen, which is already ambiguous, okay? So Enoch describes the giants as 300 cubits tall. But even outside of Enoch, later biblical references suggest large stature. And in Numbers 13, the Israelite spies say they felt like grasshoppers compared to the people in Canaan, which can imply intimidation and physical dominance. But then there's also Goliath. So depending on the manuscript tradition of which Bible you're reading, Goliath is described as roughly 6'9" to 9 foot tall. And the older Dead Sea Scroll fragment suggests closer to 6'9", but then other texts say around 9 feet. But either way, that's like usually not normal. I mean, there are some tall people, like there's Andre the Giant. He was pretty tall. And the Great Khali, he was pretty tall. They are both wrestlers also. But they're the only 2 giants that I know. Other than like every tall person I've ever come in contact with. But let me just tell you this real quick. So I was cleaning this house, right? And a light bulb blew out and my client's dad was there. And I was so grateful because he changed the light bulb. But have you ever seen someone change a light bulb while standing on their feet? Not on a ladder? Didn't even have to stand on their tippy toes? Or like turn the thing with the tips of their fingers? That was the most insane thing I've ever seen in my life. Do you know what I have to go through at 5'2" to change a light bulb? I was amazed. Amazed. I still talk about it, just like I am now. It was one of the greatest things I've ever seen in my life. But anyway, that height is not average. Sorry, I just hit my pen. Sorry for blowing it in your ear holes. But anyway, Goliath isn't alone. There's entire giant clans mentioned. There's the Anakim, the Rephaim, which I probably pronounced wrong, and I'm so gonna mess this up. The Zamzumim. The Zamzumim. That is actually so funny to say, and I bet it's probably funny to hear. If you're high, I feel like it would be really funny to hear. Anyway, that's not if it's giant clans, that's not one random tall guy. That's a group. So giant mythology is not exclusive to the Bible. There's Greek titans, which are primordial giant beings who fought the gods. And then there's Norse Jontar, and they're chaotic giants, predating or opposing the gods. And then there's the Mesopotamian pre-flood kings listed as ruling for thousands of years. And Celtic giant builders associated with ancient stone structures. And native and indigenous oral traditions across various regions describe ancient large beings. Different cultures and continents, but similar things about giants, Now, obviously, similarity does not equal proof, but sometimes there is proof in archaeology. So in the early 1800s and early 1900s, newspapers sometimes reported discoveries of unusually large skeletons in burial mounds across North America. And many of these reports were sensationalized. Some were hoaxes, some were misidentified megafauna, whatever the hell that is, and some were exaggerated. The Smithsonian does get dragged into this lore as the villain that confiscated giant skeletons. So there's no verified evidence of a secret Smithsonian warehouse full of huge skeletons, but the rumor still persists because 19th century reporting was wild and archaeology wasn't standardized. Records obviously were inconsistent. So yeah. It just got passed down all of those years, which, I don't know if giants were real. I mean, I would say it's possible they might be. My vape tastes like soap. It's not flavored, so it tastes kind of yucky. I usually get flavors like fruit punch or nerds or something like that. And this one is not flavored, so it literally tastes like weed, which I don't mind it if I'm smoking it. Flour, if it's flour, but if it's this, it tastes pretty yucky. Also, because I've been sick, it's been a couple of days since I smoked, so this is hitting me pretty hard. But anyway, there's ancient megalithic architecture that exists. Okay, have you guys seen that thing in Prague? The cathedral thing. I feel bad for not knowing the name. I know the picture. I know what it looks like. But it's this huge famous, I really want to go see it very badly. It looks ginormous. And seeing it in person, I feel would be so amazing and compared to seeing it on the phone. There's so many places in the world that I want to go. And it sucks that you have to pay money to travel. I wish we could just travel for free, back in the old days. I could just hop on some random boat, go across the sea and take a horse and be see ya. I'll stop into the nearest tavern for a chicken leg or whatever they sold back then. I probably wouldn't have made it very far though. In the Viking era, I should say. But anyway, there's also massive stones and things that have perfect cuts and blocks weighing hundreds of tons. It's wild. Wild, wild. So some of these sites, I'm going to pronounce these so wrong. Okay, so Baalbek in Lebanon and the Great Pyramid and Machu Picchu and Göbekli Tepe, which that was probably wrong, and Stonehenge, which I was going to say Stonehenge earlier because when I pictured like massive stones, I pictured Stonehenge. And like I was talking to my husband about this. I'm like, oh, do you think giants built this? Because I do. And he was like, no, I think people were taught to build it. Okay, but then why are we building what we're building now when we had all of that crazy stuff? Like there's statues built in and everything's like made of marble and there's like hidden imagery. Like why don't we build like that anymore? You know? Why is everything just, here's a piece of square wood? Like, why? Do you know if I could build a house for free? I don't think you guys know what my house would look like. For one, I would have so many books. Like every room would be a library from the floor to the ceiling, as tall as like, I would make it like 50 feet. And I'd have the biggest ladder with wheels on it so I can just run and sing songs like in Beauty and the Beast or something and sing about beasts and touch all of the books while I'm sliding by on my wheel ladder. And I'd have like a big garden that I can just walk in and like look at all of the flowers that someone else planted for me so that they're dead, so that they don't die, so that they stay alive. And then it would have, I would have some modern day things. Like I'd probably put a bowling alley down there and like a game room, you know. We have a game room, but it's also our laundry room. And we don't really play the games that much. We have NBA Jams and Pac-Man, but it comes with like a whole bunch of other stuff. And Golden Tee. Golden Tee is actually my favorite one to play. But I am looking to get a pinball machine. And I actually think I might put them in my podcast room. Oh, I'm talking about, but that's this house now. This other house, this new house, I would have the best pool, but I would have so many things. But I would also want to like make all the rooms, it would be like a castle. Picture a castle, but like part of it would be blocked off for just me because it's mine. But then the rest, I can make rooms for like homeless people to live in, you know, so they have a place to stay, you know, and it would be free for them. And my house would be free because it's already built. It's already paid for. And I'll get like solar panels or something so I don't have to pay an electric bill. Well, I mean, you still have to pay. But that's wild though, you know that? You still have to, like we have solar panels and we still have to pay an electric bill. Like even though we have the solar panels, it's a lot cheaper, obviously. It's like really cheap. But like, why can't I use the solar panels all the time? Like why do I even need to use the electric? Is it because the solar panels have to be plugged in? But why do they have to be plugged in when they are powered by the sun? How did I get to talking about this? Anyway, my bad, guys. That was a hell of a ramble. Sorry about that. Anyway. Oh yeah, I think I was talking about big, huge buildings and stuff. Okay, so I guess they would be like megalithic structures. I guess. But let's start with something that I'm pronouncing wrong again, and Göbekli Tepe. So this site was buried intentionally around 8000 BCE, and it predates agriculture as we understand it. It predates pottery and even predates cities. It contains massive carved pillars arranged in circular enclosures, some weighing up to 20 tons. And it suggests that organized ritual construction before what we thought was organized civilization, meaning people were capable of complex architecture and symbolic monument building long before they were farming the way that the textbooks describe. And I feel like that alone forces a rewrite of the timeline. Now let's talk Egypt. So the Great Pyramid is made of approximately 2.3 million stone blocks and many weigh several tons. And there's some blocks on the inside that are made of granite they weigh like far more. So mainstream Egyptology says that it was built over about 20 years and they used ramps and manpower, sledges, and engineering skills. And it was done by highly organized laborers, not slaves as older narratives suggested. And that explanation is supported by evidence of worker villages and tool marks. But here's where alternative theories enter. They enter with the precision, the alignment with true north, the internal chamber construction, the fact that some stones appear like machine smooth. And this leads to questions like, how did Bronze Age tools cut granite with that level of precision? And like some will be like, oh, copper tools or dolerite pounding stones and abrasion and time. But alternative explanation is that it's advanced lost knowledge. And then that's where the ancient advanced civilization theory begins. Now let's go to Baalbek, which I probably also pronounced wrong. So there are foundation stones there called the trilithon, may have said that wrong, and they each weigh around 800 to 1,000 tons. And that's heavier than like most modern construction cranes can lift in like a single piece. So the mainstream view is that Romans built on top of an earlier foundation and moved these stones using manpower, rollers, and engineering techniques that were lost to time. And the alternative view is that these stones were part of something older, possibly pre-Roman, possibly pre-recorded history. And then there's Peru at Huaman, which again, may have pronounced wrong. The stone walls were made of enormous blocks fitted together so tightly that you can't even slide a piece of paper between them. The cuts are irregular, curved, and perfectly interlocking. And of course they say like, oh, it was just engineering. But then why does similar stonework appear in distant cultures? And why does it look so advanced? So here's where giants get dragged back into the conversation, because the logic is like this. So if you have structures requiring immense physical capability and ancient myths describe large beings, could the myths be cultural memory of the builders? It is one way that people connect Nephilim lore to physical sites. But what if it wasn't giants, but a lost advanced civilization? So this theory suggests that before the last ice age ended, roughly like 12,000 years ago, there may have been a complex global civilization. And then came catastrophic climate shifts, massive flooding from melting ice sheets, sea levels rose over 300 feet, coastal cities would have been submerged. And where do humans build civilizations? Near water. So if sea levels rose that dramatically, ancient coastal cities would now be underwater, which means evidence could be like literally drowned. Now, we know that sea levels did rise dramatically at the end of the last ice age, and we know that there were massive meltwater pulses, and we know that human civilization likely existed in forms we haven't fully uncovered. But, I mean, we don't have verified evidence of a hyper-advanced global civilization with lost technology. But it's a possibility. So some researchers argue that knowledge appears to jump in ways that feel like abrupt. And Göbekli Tepe is a perfect example. Because why does complex ritual architecture appear so early? Did humans suddenly like level up, you know? That also brings us back to the Book of Enoch, because if the Watchers taught forbidden knowledge like metalworking and astronomy and engineering concepts, and then the flood resets things, it's possible that fragments of advanced knowledge survived and resurfaced later. I feel like the timeline of civilization is more complex than what they taught us in school. Because like, I think about this often, but like you're in school and you're in whatever grade. I remember, I don't know, maybe first grade, could have been third. I don't know. And like they teach you like, oh, this is what a farm is. And like you start small, you know, and then you go bigger, right? And then you get to high school. And well, what am I talking about? I don't know what I was just talking about, and I'll find out when I edit this, but I paused for a second and then I ended up scrolling on TikTok. So we're going to move on to a different theory. Okay, so this is the giant tree stump theory. So there's this thing called Devil's Tower. Okay, so conspiracy communities claim that this is not a volcanic formation, because I was just going to say it's basically like a volcanic formation, but they think that it's a massive petrified tree stump. And this is because it has vertical bark-like ridges. The top is relatively flat and it rises dramatically from flat land. So the theory says that Earth once had trees like miles tall. After a global catastrophe, possibly a mud flood, they were cut down or destroyed, leaving behind stumps that fossilized. Some say mountains are the rest of the trunks. Science says it's columnar basalt, which I maybe have pronounced wrong, but it's like when lava cools slowly and it contracts into hexagonal columns. But the same pattern does appear all over the world. There's Giant's Causeway, and all these things are hexagonal columns. Technically not a tree or like a giant stump, but visually, it absolutely fuels the imagination. So there is a branch of this theory that claims, what theory was this? Oh yeah, the giant tree stump theory. I was confused for a second. Have you ever had your brain get confused while you were literally talking about something? Like you're talking, but your brain's talking to you at the same time. Does that happen to anybody else? Do you know there's people out there whose brains are just nothing? Like their mind is nothing. Like when they read a book, they just read the words. Like, isn't that wild? How sad for them. Because I love books. I love reading books because you can literally escape into another world, you know? Like if you don't like your husband, you can just go find a boyfriend in a book. You know? Or like you want to visit someplace, or maybe you want to be a wolf. Go read a book. You know? I love books. Why am I talking about books? Oh yeah. So there's a part of this theory, the tree theory thing, whatever, that ancient giants were turned to stone or salt during catastrophic events. But this also connects to biblical things. So there's Mount Sodom, and some claim that salt pillars here are petrified beings. So basically, Mount Sodom is a salt. I think it's diapir, but literally it's not spelled like diaper, but I was going to pronounce it diaper. It's diapir. I don't know why that made me chuckle. But anyway, underground salt that gets pushed upward by tectonic forces, and salt erodes into human-like shapes at this place. But apparently our brains are very good at seeing people in rocks. There's a name for it actually, and it's called pareidolia. Yeah, learned something new today. And then there's also the thing with the mountains, like the sleeping giant mountains. So this mountain range looks like a giant lying down. And local indigenous legend describes it as a spirit turned to a stone. Geology says erosion and sedimentary rock layering. But have you guys ever heard of Tartaria? So there's a theory out there that there was this global empire called Tartaria. It had advanced technology, it built massive structures, harvested energy from the atmosphere, and it was erased from history after a mud flood in the 1800s. So supporters point to old maps labeled Tartary, buildings with massive doorways, world's fair architecture, buried first floors in old cities, star forts, and cathedrals with energy spires. And they say that the mud flood buried entire civilizations. Giants were part of this society, and history was rewritten. Now, there is like a map argument. So old European maps did label large parts of Asia as Tartary, but historically, Tartary was a vague European term used between the 16th and 19th centuries to describe Central and Northern Asia, especially regions inhabited by Turkic and Mongol groups. Just a little FYI. So photos in the 1800s of cities show buildings with the windows like below ground. And the theory with that is that civilization was buried suddenly. I think I mentioned the Smithsonian earlier. You know, I recorded this episode twice because after I finished the entire episode the first time, it deleted itself. And I was like, dang, which I told a joke in there that probably wasn't even funny. So that's why it deleted itself, most likely. It was like, girl, that wasn't funny. Do it again. But anyway, if I didn't mention the Smithsonian yet, I mentioned it in the last episode, and that's why I said it. But the Smithsonian Institution destroyed giant skeleton evidence. And there are old newspaper articles from the 1800s, which I have mentioned before, that were reporting 8 to 12 foot skeletons. 1800s newspapers did print hoaxes constantly. If the Smithsonian did have giant skeleton evidence, why would they destroy it, you know? But I do remember seeing a video of an archaeological dig where they found these huge bones, crazy long. And it was like a femur. You could tell it was a femur. And it was so big. It was wild. But what do you think? Do you guys think there's giants out there? Or were giants out there? I feel like there's giants out there every day I step outside. Well, hopefully this episode left you with more questions than answers. If you enjoyed today's deep dive, then tell a friend about it. Be like, hey, Listen to this weirdo. Listen to what she says. Actually, don't listen to what I say. Don't listen to a word I say, because I don't even know what I'm talking about most of the time. But like, listen to this podcast though. Please. If you're on Spotify or Apple or wherever else you get your podcast, you can leave a 5-star rating. And I saw on Spotify somebody did. I don't know who. Like, I can't see it. But my number went up from 2 to 3. And that's pretty exciting. Shout out to those listening on Nighthawk Radio. The song of the week this week is Lives We Lead by Greg and Good Company. And I think you should go stream it and go listen to him. His name's Greg. And he's in good company. Or you'll be in good company when you listen to it. Anyway, stay weird, stay curious, go be kind to someone for no reason, and go be amazing.
Burning men buy their war once a year, one whole week, trading goods, retro chic, Mercury, retrograde, $10 knows what they'll say. Vibes are good, I feel great, drugs feel great, but something's gonna have to give for us to live the way we always like to talk about, but always push away. Everybody loves a dream but wakes, it seems, back into the lives we lead. Every day I feel cool, microdose, bought my mood, macrodose, made me die, death felt good, I'll be fine, holy shit, what's that like, red feels weird, white's alright, must be God, sure feels nice, I'm alright, but something's gonna have to give for us to live the way we always like to talk about, but always push away. Let explain that life is free, it's love you need. Lose yourself and live the dream. So confused, was that real? And what's real too? I don't care, how about you? I want food, so something's gonna have to give for us to live the way we always like to talk about, but always push away. Everybody loves a dream but wakes, it seems, back into the lives we lead. Oh, can we change the lives we lead? Or is it all a movie screen? Playing all the lives we lead. Lose yourself and live the dream.
Carvana's so easy, just a click, and we've got ourselves a car. See?
So many cars. That's a click-tastic inventory.
And check out the financing options. Payments to fit our budget. I mean, that's
Clickonomics 101.
delivery to our door.
Just a hop, skip, and a click away.
And what?
No better feeling than when everything just clicks. Buy your car today on
Carvana.
Delivery fees may apply.